all the teachers from the community at Mindin are really having great understanding that life in this Western society at the moment, in a digital culture, is not that easy, and that compassion is the doorway to healing.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Changemakers. Today we are diving back into the topic of exhaustion, depression, and burnout. We see daily with our clients of all ages how many of them are currently profoundly discouraged with the current situation. In this episode, we would like to share with you some of the ways you can reconnect with yourself, lower your stress levels, and spread hope for yourself and the future that you'd like to create. Today, we will have a Zoom conversation with Manuela Peverelli, a mindfulness teacher at Mindfulness Studio in Zürich. After working as a psychiatric nurse for many years, Manuela noticed that a large part of healing the mind was missing in Western culture. In order to expand her mindfulness education and practice, Manuela has now spent over 13 winters in Asia, deepening her expertise in meditation, mindfulness, and learning how to navigate life with less stress and more peaceful relationships. She has also completed further studies at the Academy of Ayurveda. Welcome to Changemakers, Manuela. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your journey discovering meditation and mindfulness in Eastern culture, coming from a psychiatric background?
Well, I happened to came across the practice in the East, in Southeast Thailand, in a monastery or in a monastic setting. I had not much of an idea, or I had some imagination what meditation could be. But I entered a retreat, a 14-day silent retreat, and the conditions were rather difficult. So we slept on concrete beds, and the pillow was a wooden block, and we started meditating at 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night with just one meal a day. And before that experience, I kind of thought, I'm doing fine. My mind is fine. In my job as a psychiatric nurse, I was on the healthy side. I was doing okay. But then I got in there, and it didn't take long till I realized I'm in trouble. I'm in deep trouble, because my mind is suffering, and I'm reluctant to where I am and what I have to do, just sitting here and doing nothing, looking at my mind or listening to my own inner voices. It was really painful, and it took me probably 7 days or even more to realize that it is myself who can actually get out of this suffering, that I can let go, and not having to change the conditions, but to having the freedom to choose my perspective, to choose my relationship to what I'm experiencing. And that kind of, for me, was a big breakthrough, and led me to many more investigations, first in the East for many years, and then later on also in Western practice spaces or retreat centers.
Wow, that's such a powerful experience. So that was a silent retreat for 14 days.
Yes, and I've never, even held more silence probably than a few hours. So, and I thought, well, it can't be too difficult. I like when it's calm, I thought it's all going to be a blissful experience, but it proved to be a bit different, at least for the first few days.
That's interesting. That 14 days sounds like such a long time, but as you said, it actually takes a few days, maybe even a week, to really get into it. And it probably wouldn't have been enough if it had stopped after 7 days. You really needed that time to become at peace with yourself.
Yes, I mean, our conditioning is rather firm and solid, right? The conditioning of our mind. And I think it's not by chance that the traditional retreats, they at least take 10 days. It used to be, now it's not any longer, but it used to be the minimum of a retreat length. And yeah, I think there is a reason for that, because it is it needs a bit of suffering, I think, to realize, okay, I can actually relax.
Okay. So you mentioned the difference between Eastern and Western culture, specifically in healing your mind. How is Mind in Studio bridging that gap here in Zurich?
Well, in Minding, it's practitioners like me who walk on this path since several years, who are dedicated to search, to investigate, to cultivate the heart more. And it is this understanding from a Western mindset what the practice can serve us for, or what can it do. And therefore, I feel it's a very authentic way to transmit the practice, and we all are committed to try to find a language which is easy digestible for the Western mind, as the sometimes the Eastern language to transmit the practice, the way I got to know it from Eastern monks and nuns, can be rather harsh and sometimes yes, kind of pushy, and that I felt like it's not helping the Western mind so much. We are already too strict, too harsh, and disciplined with ourselves. So it's helpful to rather emphasize a bit the compassion and the loving kindness side. And I think all the teachers from the community at Mindin are really having great understanding that life in this Western society at the moment, in a digital culture, is not that easy, and that compassion is the doorway to healing.
That's so beautiful. It sounds like you are really offering the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and it is maybe that I forgot to say, but it is an undogmatic space. You know, it's not bound to a certain tradition or to a certain practice. It's quite free and open, and that way it is unique, I find.
Okay, so you can really draw on the different experiences that you've made to really make it your own. Would you say that you have a specific style that you integrate into your teachings?
Well, I think it's as I'm changing, as everything is changing, my own experience, the conditions around, also my teaching is changing and influenced by what's going on around. But I do have some pillars, I would say, which upon I base on, and one is certainly is to hold silence. I find very powerful. Of course, it's not natural, or it's not what we are in daily life in our relationships used to do, but to really dig into our mind and to understand our patterns and our reactivity. I find silence is really helpful to get to know the ragnarok of our own identity. And that's one of the pillars. And as I already mentioned, is self-compassion, I think, is also what I find Western practitioners really have a lack of, or we need to be more compassionate with our flaws and faults, rather than trying to be the good person and pretend we're just the spiritual person who doesn't have any flaws and faults.
I think a lot of people feel that way when trying meditation for the first time, that they become frustrated, that they feel it's something that they should be able to do, but they can't just drop into this clear mind, that a lot of people are really hard on themselves and forget that it actually is a practice like any other and that it takes time to learn.
Absolutely. And I think there is no way around our own inner rubbish, our own, we come across the darkness, we come across our own shadows, we come across our own frustration patterns, our fears, our insecurities, our ego, the one which wants to be something else than what or who I am. And that's not all just blissful. That can be quite difficult at times, sometimes frustrating, sometimes very sad, and can take us apart from the inside out, which is a good thing. But for that, I think it's helpful to have someone who holds the space with and for you. If it can be also sometimes it can bring up fear, that if is this really the right thing to do? Now I feel worse than before I meditated, now I'm all sitting here crying. Is this really a good thing? Maybe I should stop and just entertain myself differently. But to understand that this is exactly the path is someone is needed, I think, to lead the way along, lead along the way.
So we've already mentioned mindfulness, but also meditation. Maybe just for our listeners that are new to this, how would you explain the difference between these two?
Well, meditation, I would say, is the time and the space where we create the condition that awareness can unfold freely. I prefer the term awareness than mindfulness, because mindfulness can also lead to the idea that it's full of mind. So it's not. But yeah, that it is a space where we dedicate to let go of our habitual way of thinking, of our addicted way of analyzing, planning, remembering, and we explore what awareness is, what the freedom of awareness is, as our own essence is awareness. It's nothing we actually have to make or we can make. It's happening itself. It's just usually it's clouded or it's dulled by thoughts and by ideas of who we are. So our job is, I would say, in meditation, our job is to look at the clouds, to investigate what the roots of those clouds, and to build up a trust, a confidence that behind the clouds there is a blue sky, and that we can find glimpses, or we can, if we sit long enough and if we trust the path, it will clear, it will brighten for sure.
I love that. That's so beautiful. I like the idea of using awareness instead of mindfulness. I feel that mindfulness has such a weight attached to it. Like it's, oh, I need to be mindful, but being aware is something that, as you said, it's something that should come naturally to us. That actually just becoming aware of one's surroundings sounds like a lot more achievable for someone just starting out on their path.
Yes, and I think that can be a great misunderstanding. And honestly, I misunderstood it for I think several years, that it is, I don't have to do more effort. I don't have to pull myself together as hard I can to of course, awareness comes with being concentrated in a way, but it is rather more an effortless being here-ness, being with where I am. It's as simple as that, yet not always easy.
I hear the phrase often now: we are human beings, not human doings. and sometimes we mix the two.
Absolutely. And there is this beautiful mudra from the Buddha who holds up this hand, Abhaya mudra it's called, and this is it. The first thing we have to do to realize our being is to stop. Stop the doing, stop the constantly being active in our mind and in our body as well. So the sitting still, the formal practice helps the informal practice, but at the end our life takes place in doing things or being of service, being creative, but to learn to be in what we really are, the formal practice of sitting still, that really helps, I find.
What excites you most about the human mind?
I love this question. Well, I think over and over, almost daily when I sit, how wild it is, how creative it is, and also how fast it is. And also that it is malleable. It is not something strict or firm. That's the way it is, something solid. It's changing and it is workable. And also one thing that also took me a long time to realize, that when I want to work with my mind, it becomes much more pliable when I treat it with love, forgiveness, and compassion, rather than harshness and rigor and rigidity. And that, I think, in the West we have some work to do to really realize that. Which doesn't mean, sometimes we think, okay, then it's all hang loose and we can just, it's all about petting yourself and think you just need to be loving with yourself. That's, of course, it needs a solid structure to also be honest with oneself. We can easily cheat ourselves and make up this spiritual idea or image, and that's not the path. That's just a detour to freedom. So sometimes a little bit of harshness is needed, or a little bit of, I would say, a solid, a firm way of practice.
It sounds like sometimes it's actually not the path of least resistance, but the path of most resistance that will lead us to more learning and, at the end of the day, more peace and serenity in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's the two wings. So the bird would fly, on one side it is like, yes, we have to face where we are resistant or against what we are resistant. And on the other side, then when we see that, rather than creating more resistance against it, be really forgiving and hold space for this to dissolve.
So we spoke about the power of silence, but also of self-compassion. What are some other really powerful tools of mindfulness or awareness?
For me, one of the greatest gift it gives me is to be more awake, to be more. There is almost like a higher vigilance to how I see and perceive life. And what I find very helpful with this is the ability to distinct between thoughts, between the thinking and feelings. So it's not all intermingled, but I see the thought is creating a feeling, and to find this gap, to find a gap between, there comes an impulse, may that be internal, like in my thoughts or emotions, and then the reaction. And what awareness or the practice of mindfulness is doing is it's opening up a gap, so I can I can make a choice how I want to react, or if I want to react upon this impulse. And that's normally in daily life, or when we're not conscious, we are just like on autopilot. It's automatically responding to the situation, and very often it's responding to the situation which is not to our own fortune, or not to our own well-being, or the other person's well-being.
That sounds very powerful, that we can create this space to give us clarity on what is happening within our own bodies, and then choosing to act or not, rather than just being reactive.
Exactly. And also, there is very often when we react very spontaneously, or without having really reflected upon it, it's always the same reaction. May that be we're reacting with closing down, shutting down. I'm feeling kind of not intimidated, or I'm not able to really stay open, remain open. But when we have this gap, we all of a sudden we see there is a broader a broader spectrum of how I would like to react. I can keep quiet, I can respond, I can say, okay, I need time to think about that. Can we talk later on? There is many ways of reactions.
How can we integrate mindfulness practices into our day-to-day busy, maybe 9 to 5 kind of lives?
Well, again, if we use the term awareness rather than mindfulness, there is nothing I couldn't be aware of. And there is no moment I couldn't be aware. There is awareness is the essence of our being. So whatever I do in daily life, I can actually, theoretically, I can become aware of. Now, we are so trapped. Very often, we are imprisoned to our thoughts and our patterns of how the mind is navigating through daily life. And so, if it's quite unfamiliar yet, this consciousness of being open and receptive, it helps to start very little. I find, like choosing one activity in daily life where I want to be really just where I am, fully absorbed in what I'm doing. Could be cooking, or could be creaming your own body, or oiling your body, or could be being with your child, playing with your child. So we choose kind of windows where we really are committed to only do one thing at a time, and try to be connected to our senses. So that's the doorway to here now, our sense experiences. What do I hear? What sounds are present? What touch can I feel? What is the temperature? What do I smell? Maybe perhaps taste. What do I see? What images do I see, without making the next step to judge it? Just receiving. Yeah, so it's as I already said, it's very simple. It's nothing very complex, and yet sometimes it's difficult.
Mm-hmm. Practice makes perfect, I guess. What benefit would you say that being aware in these moments in our lives, what benefit can that have on our health and well-being?
Well, as we start through awareness, we start to realize what's going on internally, physically and mentally. And through that, we also realize imbalances. We realize when we're not well, or we realize the first indications when we're out of balance, or when we're feeling like closing down or shutting down, or we're feeling ashamed, or we're feeling jealous, we notice. And then we, through this early noticing, we can cure ourselves, or we can quicker move back to a balanced state. And rather than when we're all the way out of balance, it takes us much longer to cure ourselves, especially in the body. Also, when we catch a flu early, yeah, it's much quicker. We can cure from it, rather than we ignore it. We just take some medicaments and think it's all going to be good, but we're not having enough sleep. We don't drink enough. We don't eat healthy food. Of course, the disease will spread. And it's the same thing with the mind. As sooner we take care of it, as sooner we take care of our feelings of feeling depressed, feeling powerless, feeling being trapped in shame or guilt or grief. As sooner we take care of it, as easier it is to heal.
I've read that emotions have a purpose, and so when they come up, it's important to be able to name the emotion and also to accept it, because the more we push it down, the stronger it will come up. And so if we are ignoring that, or always pushing that to the side, so in our daily lives, I'll deal with that later, the stronger this emotion is going to keep coming back. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes. It's like you bottle it, and that it's a certain point, usually it's exploding in a moment where you don't really want it to explode. And very often then the damage is much bigger than when we take care of it, when it's there and it's little, and I have the capacity to hold the space for it and be with it. But it's also I think it happens because in our society, those difficult emotions are not very welcome. We even teach little children to stop crying, or to don't be jealous. We try to be the good persons, or embody this, but we are not true to difficult emotions, or we are not handling difficult emotions in a way that we can remain free. And that's I think why most of us first have to do some healing work to really whatever is bottled up needs to be freed up. So whatever is repressed needs to be addressed, and that usually takes some time.
So let's say that we notice a certain emotion coming up and we've noticed it early. You mentioned making space for it. How would you recommend to go about curing or healing this negative emotion?
Well, out in this spiritual circus, I say, not meaning it in a negative sense, there is many offerings of how one can approach to work with oneself. And I have my own path where I'm really dedicated to. I don't think it's the only way. I think there is many different ways, and that really each person needs to find its own individual path. It also depends on your biography and your relationship to those practices. For some, silence may not be the right thing, because silence in their family meant maybe there is an argument, or there is having been some difficulties, so everybody's silent. But for me, certainly it is to spend time with oneself. That's the first thing. Stop running away from myself. Stop escaping from pain there is. Making space and finding the courage and for many of us, that means we need some professional guidance to really find the courage to be with it. Some people can do it by themselves, but many of us, then again, we find the way out, or we talk to ourselves, all is going to be fine, but actually we're not really digging down to the source of the pain. And then it's again, it's more simple than sometimes the Western mind would like to hear. We would like things to be complicated and complex, but to make space for it, to sit with it, to connect, is almost all we have to do. Find look out for a kind of a sense of dignity to be with it, and it will transform. I'm convinced about that.
I guess that's just shining the light of our awareness on it and giving it the, like you said, the space that it needs to change and to transform. Maybe all it needs is a little attention.
Exactly. And kindness and forgiveness, I think also, that we don't have to be perfect and we don't have to be enlightened.
I think we can all benefit from those sorts of thoughts every now and again.
Exactly.
Would you say that how we treat ourselves is connected to how we treat our environment?
Absolutely, yes, because things are interdependent. Yeah, we're not separate from nature. We're not separate from each other. Even I'm living here and other people live in Africa or in India or in China. And as I become aware of what's going inside of me, as more I also I experience, I become interested in what's going on around me, in my family, but also in my society, and then it goes further out and further out. So we start to maybe ask questions: what do I consume? And how much waste do I produce, and where are things coming from, and what kind of work conditions are coming with that product, and so on.
I think that's a very relevant topic. And now in the current situation in the world, people are really rethinking not only what am I consuming, but what is the path that this product took before it even came to me. And I think becoming more local in our thinking as well as our consuming is becoming more and more relevant nowadays.
Yes, I think so too. And I strongly believe that there is no true spirituality without raising also environmental consciousness. And I'm having a long ways to go. I'm absolutely aware of that, because I was very unaware for a long time. And yet I think even here it starts with being honest to myself, and being open to learn, and being also interested in learning, and willing to give up some of the comfort maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think it's always a good place to start, to just admit that you don't know, but that you're willing to learn. That can be a great start for anyone.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think if we come across these practices and we think we already know, we're in trouble. Not knowing mind is the best way to start.
So, in a new chapter in your journey, Manuela, you've just opened a retreat center in the south of France. Would you like to tell us a bit about your new project?
Yes, happily. Soon after I met my partner a few years ago in India, we realized we share the same vision to create a space which is dedicated to spiritual practices, without being bound or just having one tradition behind. but rather having the freedom to integrate whatever we find helpful at the moment. And it took a couple of years to blossom. We had to face a lot of challenges. Even again now with the COVID, it's not easy, but we opened up last November. That's where I am at the moment. And it's called Metta Villa, and Metta is the translation from Pali, is loving kindness. So it is a space where we really try to embody those principles. And it is, as you can see, embedded into nature, which helps, I think, to calm, to restore, and to find more clarity, to connect with our essence of being, our true nature. And so everybody who is interested in learning more about him or herself, in finding peace and cultivating the heart states, is warmly welcome.
It looks beautiful. It's just so inviting. I would like to just walk outside bare feet and just ground myself in the nature.
Yeah, there is a big park around where you could walk bare feet.
Manuela, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
As the Mind In Studio also says, meditation not only regenerates your body, but also increases your stress resistance and strengthens your ability to concentrate. So allowing for more mental clarity, but also capacity. So maybe we can all integrate some silence, some self-compassion, and just create some space for us in our day-to-day life. Make sure to check out their website, mindin.studio, and follow them on Instagram at mindinmeditation. We'll leave the links for you down below. That's it for me today, Changemakers. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon.